Hello, hello. This is the 94th Test from the Future, an experimental podcast from the year 2223, which we are sending from our present to yours. My name is Dirk.
And my name is Simon.
And we're putting the past in podcast. So, what's the topic of today?
Go straight into it.
Yes.
Floating farms.
Yes. I thought last time we introduced in great detail to remind our listeners.
The introduction was very long.
Exactly. So if they want to figure out what we're talking about, listen last week's episode. This week's episode, it's great. It's straight into topic.
I'll say what they are.
Yes.
So they're farms that float upon the ocean, producing whatever the farm is producing and delivering it as they go.
It's a really simple concept.
Yeah.
And it's technology, because the whole floating on the ocean thing is...
Sure, they're not naturally occurring farms. They're constructed and maintained through technology. Hasn't yet got to the point where they can just reproduce themselves and be autonomous.
That would actually be pretty cool. Reproducing floating farms.
That's maybe for the future, but at least right now that's not how they are.
I'm thinking, like, because a farm is essentially a whole bunch of dirt, right?
Yeah.
So if you have trees growing on it, trees also grow. So do these farms actually grow?
Yeah. Well, it's okay. Yeah. At the base level, you have a platform that's floating, upon which or into which there is soil and other earthy stuff that's necessary for whatever plants to grow. And then the crops, or like you said, trees, maybe if it's an orchard, or other, not crops in terms of food that people will eat directly, but maybe stuff that's used for other purposes, like producing clothes or things like that, like cotton or so on.
But it's like, because like nature naturally reproduces. I never thought about it actually. Also, when we looked into the topic, I didn't actually look into this, but I can imagine, because trees are growing, seeds are falling, and then next to the trees, another tree growing. That's kind of how nature works, right?
Sure. But I mean, it's a farm. Farming's been done for quite a long time by now. So, I mean, in that regard, they are no different from farms on land. The things that make them unique are the fact that they're floating on the ocean and move around.
I guess also, like on land, if there's like a seed falling next to the tree, there's more land next to the tree where the tree can grow. I guess on the ocean it doesn't work.
You're talking about the ones on the edges. I was a bit confused, because sure, in the middle, or for most of the area of the farm, there will be land where the seed falls.
Actually, yeah.
Just right on the edges, there won't be. Again, I mean, that's no different from a regular farm, which is maybe bordering a lake of lava. The seeds fall in the lava. They're also not going to grow there. So,
okay. I guess this is something, if this turns out to be a really exciting topic, listeners can ask, we can research, and we can have floating farms, part 2.
Yeah.
The mystery of the
return of the floater.
Exactly. The mystery of this falling seeds. Okay, so why are floating farms so great, actually?
Yeah. So they are particularly well suited for things that require maybe a type of weather that normally only exists for a few weeks or a month or so in a certain location. But because the farm itself can move around, it can follow the weather.
Yeah.
And then can have, instead of just one crop a year, can have several crops throughout the year.
Actually, summarizing it like that, it seems really smart. So because like a farm, you can't teleport like a massive farm, like an orchard. So it's way too big. Yeah. And then if you're a farm, you're stuck. No matter how great your farm is, you're going to be stuck in one location. That's it. Yeah. If it's snowing, too bad for you. If it's raining, too bad for you. Yeah. Or good, I guess.
Depending on whatever is necessary. I mean, the other aspect is, the land, so whether it's a real farm, landlocked, or a floating farm, it cannot be used non-stop. It needs sometimes to rest, to go fallow. And when it's doing that, maybe it doesn't need to be in the place where the perfect weather is for growing stuff. It can move along somewhere else, do that regeneration that's necessary, and then go back into the production when it's ready.
I guess it's then particularly useful for kind of like temperate crops.
Yeah.
So like apples have been jealously looking at pineapples and cocoa beans for many, many centuries or millennia. Like, oh, these guys can, grow a whole year through.
Mm-hmm.
But now apples can too.
They can too, with the aid of floating farms.
And spinach.
Yep, spinach as well.
I'm not so much into farms.
Oh, am I?
I guess.
There must be plenty.
And I guess also, like, even if you have, like, even if you're growing bananas, which are, like, naturally growing in tropical areas, you still have, like, the rainy season and the not rainy season, and you can... Okay.
Basically to make the best use of the weather all around the world.
And also, I guess, like, storms happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're in an area where everything is great, sun is shining, or it's raining, or hailstorms, or whatever your crops need, and then suddenly a storm is coming, like the kind of storm that you don't need.
Right, the kind that will wreck the plants.
Exactly. And since we can't influence the weather, let's influence the location.
Mm-hmm. At least turn the back of the farm against the storm.
I mean, that's also what I know from the news, where they're saying, hey, there's like a storm brewing on the Atlantic, and they show pictures of all the massive farms, moving down south.
Yeah.
Here's a bunch of banana farms. Here's a mandarin farm going south. Now it's, the kiwis have to go first because they're more sensitive and so on. There's a bit of a traffic jam going south.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a second order way of telling the weather, but it's like a hobby for folk who like to fly around in gliders. That instead of looking at their on their lens to see what the weather is, they tell the weather by looking down at which farms are moving where.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's a good point actually, because the farms probably know firsthand. Mm-hmm. It is essential for them to be
really important.
Informed as soon as possible. I also heard that, like, because there's a bunch of big corporations doing it, that's one of the biggest innovations that they have, to be able to predict the weather further and further in advance, to be the first ones going south.
Yeah.
And then some of the competition says, they're moving their orange farms down south. There must be something going on, and then everybody follows suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there've been one or two occasions where a farm got a little bit too greedy and would send false flag operations, trying to trick the competitors. Oh yeah, we're moving that way. And then, they'd follow, and then actually that would ruin their competitors' crops but that does not happen often. That's really unsporting. Yeah.
But because it's interesting, because you can see them really clearly if you're looking at satellite images also from really high up. And then because of, like, say, a banana farm, there's a whole bunch of yellow. Yeah. So even like if you look at it from a satellite perspective, you can say there are some yellow farms there, some orange farms there. Way up north are the red farms, and then kind of which crops they're growing. But you can see that they basically take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and there's way more surface of the earth covered in ocean than there is covered in land. And
also like apple farms. I think there are still some apple farms actually at like a fixed location. Because of whatever, history, or that's like...
but I mean, there aren't I think some very small number of long-established farms have moved to become floating farms, but the vast majority of floating farms are new.
Yeah.
So the ones that have been established for a long time, landlocked, stay that way.
Yeah.
Like for tradition, people like living where they're living.
But I also understood that because of the benefit that the floating farms have over the landlocked ones, that it's really just the traditional ones with a really strong brand awareness that stayed alive, but a bunch of, let's say, smaller ones or less successful ones, they just stopped.
Yeah, and ones where it was maybe more profitable to use the land for something else.
Yeah, and also, of course, if you can produce 2 apples a year instead of 1, then you kind of outprice the competition. Mm-hmm. And then, but that also meant there was a whole bunch of space left on land.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Which is kind of overgrown by nature, I guess.
Sure, it's been really nice in that regard too, and rewilding.
Yeah, that's true actually. And then on the other hand, we've put some of our stuff on the ocean. That was, and of course, the ocean got to be free from everything for so long. Mm-hmm. Now they get to have some land, and the land gets to have some quiet.
And they get to have some more activity on the surface. Yeah,
exactly. But what I understood, or what I at least found out, which wasn't so clear to me until we did some of our research, that it's not all great.
Sure, no, there are some newer issues that are coming up, especially as more and more farms, floating farms, are built. For example, the Suez and the Panama Canals, the larger floating farms cannot fit through them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they try anyway.
I know. But it's basically, that means you have like this north-south movement. So up and down the Atlantic, up and down the Pacific, but not so much up and down the Indian Ocean, because you can't really get that far up north.
Right.
And then you can't really go through the Suez or Panama Canal. I think that's correct. If you want to go from the Pacific to the Atlantic, you have to really go all the way around. Really old school.
There are some farms which use a farmlet design, where it's instead of one monolithic farm, it's made up of these smaller farmlets. That when they're in the larger ocean, when they're out to sea, they form back together to make one larger farm. But to get through narrower straits of water, so like the Panama Canal, that they can go in a row. It costs way more.
Yeah.
It's way more complicated, more things to go wrong. But there are a few really, really new farms like that.
Okay, but that actually sounds really cool. Because I remember for the longest time they've been discussing widening the Panama Canal.
Yeah, no, that was a no-go.
Yeah, exactly, because it would have taken up most of Panama.
Exactly, there wouldn't have been much Panama left.
Yes, well, the canal would be named after the country that used to be there.
Right.
And then Panama objected.
They were not going for that.
Yeah. Although there was a bunch of, if there's a bunch of land floating by, you can just basically emigrate there.
As far as I know, so yeah, right, in principle, why do the farms not have like permanent residence, have citizenship and so on? It's not allowed by treaty, like meaning when the floating farms were really taking off, there were a few that said, hey, come work here and you can be a citizen of Farm Floatia. That wasn't a real one yet, but then sure, existing countries like, or no, and put a stop to it.
And they all voted. All the existing countries said
all
no.
the countries voted, and there was like one or two of them which were floating farms, and they were outvoted by all the other ones.
Ah, okay, clever. I didn't even know about this. But I think the moments where something doesn't work out is when it makes the news. It's like, of course. I like the Panama stuff that was in the news, and also big. When the was the banana farm that got stuck between Denmark and Sweden.
Right. Got wedged in there.
How did they solve that in the end? Because it was there for weeks.
Yep, it was. And in the end, they just had to throw half of all their bananas overboard.
Oh, no. There must have been a whole bunch of bananas washing up on the shores.
Exactly, and a whole bunch of sea life that wasn't used to processing or eating bananas at all, but then suddenly having so much in their diet, it caused quite a lot of problems.
And also probably lowered the price for bananas on the one hand, because like the whole coast of the North Sea was then flooded with bananas.
Right, for the price for salty bananas went really low. The price for non-salty bananas, that went up for a little bit because there was half the supply.
Because they only had a few left.
Yeah. I mean, one side effect of floating farms being out to sea, that it's become much more popular to have salty vegetables. Like pre-salted, you don't have to add salt when you cook them.
That's actually pretty smart.
And fruit too, and so.
Wow, you get your spinach or your lettuce or...
And not just any old salt, sea salt.
Wow, okay, that's actually... I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, you're right. I heard when the banana farm got stuck between Sweden and Denmark, it's actually bordering land, right?
Yeah.
And then apparently land animals got on board.
Sure, right, because it was wedged in there for a while. They could literally just walk along, hop along, walk along.
Yeah, and not just like deer and foxes, but rabbits and moles and...
Moles, right, badgers as well.
Yeah, animals you really don't want on your farm. And they were thinking, hey, it's floating, we won't never have these kind of problems.
Right, and so they didn't have measures in place to prevent that happening, like fences or the like.
And because they had no natural enemies, and then there was a whole bunch of fruit to be eaten.
It's a paradise for those animals that got on there.
But apparently it's a common thing on farms, on floating farms, where like one point or another, land animals get on board. And they have all kinds of measures now, also after that incident.
Sure.
But it's apparently really hard to fight. Yeah.
Yeah, for example, once you've got rabbits tunneling underneath the farm, you can try your best to get rid of them, but there will still always be some.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine that would be something the competitors would do,
Oh, indeed.
Yeah. Visit you and then let go of some rabbits, mice.
Moles.
But here it's also coming from below.
Yeah, that's even cooler. So not animals being either sabotage or just by luck getting on, but rather animals in the sea recognizing, hey, there's some good eating up there, and developing ways of either tunneling through or jumping up out of the water and landing on the farms to munch it up.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, although I wouldn't have thought of it myself, but I think I only learned about it when I saw the first pictures of the giant ocean aardvark.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
I mean, first you would think like they made that up. That animal doesn't exist, but it's some sort of evolved version of the aardvark, which is like I think it's
like an anteater or something.
Yeah, like a ground digging, like hole digging kind of land animal.
Yeah,
but it got evolved into some sort of a giant ocean version, so it's way bigger. Still looks like an aardvark, but it has more like fins, kind of finny things instead of paws.
Like its back legs are more like flippers.
Yeah, exactly. And it basically...
But it's still got the tunneling at the front. Like it's paws at the front are more still diggers.
Exactly. And it's still like this pink, this bright pink animal. So first you think this is made up, when they caught the first one. But then when they caught the first one, that was just a sign of there's a whole bunch of more down here.
Yeah.
And they can basically swim from farm to farm. So it's like even if you manage to keep them away from your own one, they swim somewhere else. And if they will at one point come back. And if they've evolved, then maybe they will evolve against countermeasures.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the most obvious thing being to get more and more larger and larger. So that, you put up a fence. Okay, now they're big enough, they just brush that fence aside.
Exactly.
Or like you're saying, tunneling through from beneath. And the ones, it's accelerated evolution, yeah? So the ones that tunneled through in such a way that they sank the farm, okay, those ones didn't stick around long. But the ones who worked out, or not worked out consciously, but the ones who tunneled through and then the farm still stayed floating, they were more successful, able to have more baby giant aardvarks. There were more of those.
And they anticipate as well, right? By now they know like the migration patterns. They know, hey, it's getting warmer here. These guys will soon be on the move.
Right.
We'll be making our way down.
Yeah, like I was saying, people who enjoy flying gliders, telling the weather by the movement of the floating farms, the underwater equivalent hobby submariners who follow the giant schools, I guess, of ocean aardvarks. Yeah. Big pink things floating, moving through the ocean. They use those to navigate as well.
And I guess also, if you have a farm, you go like, I think the weather is going to be warm for a couple of more weeks. We'll be staying around, and you see all the aardvarks depart, and you go like, let's follow these guys. No matter how annoying they are usually right. That's actually pretty cool. You remember any other news moments from the floating farms?
So we mentioned earlier how the floating farms will follow the weather, whatever's suitable for them, or avoid bad weather and so on. And there are some more unique ones, rather than longer term things. So, for example, Brussels sprouts, they need before they're harvested, they need to have at least they need a frosty night.
True, yeah.
And the problem can be they go where the pack ice is, but sometimes they'll get stuck. Okay, and they're there for too long, then they're no longer can be sold as fresh Brussels sprouts. They have to be sold as frozen ones.
Oh yeah. Okay. So once you get them, you have to thaw them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You go where the ice is, you get stuck in the ice.
Occasionally.
What I thought was interesting when I saw there are tours now. Like you can book a trip with the farm.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool. Like depending on if you buy like a frosty trip or a warm trip or whatever, it's basically if you're on a farm that needs cold, I guess.
Yeah, cool weather.
Then you have the guarantee that the weather is exactly that. So you can basically book a holiday based on the kind of weather you want to have. You want to have a warm holiday, you book a holiday on a farm that needs warm weather. and you have a guarantee weather, because if it's not like that, they just float somewhere where it is. Because they need to.
Right, and this is, as you were saying, this is people on holiday. That's like the medium, I guess, most common way that people travel with farms. There is also the student travel angle, like you want a year out from between school and university, say. And in the past, sure, you would visit some country and do, some farm work for some months. And the trade would be, you do, they say, 6 months of working on farms, and you have 6 months in the country to travel around. So it's a similar thing, except you're not limited to that one island. You work on an island for a bit, and then they have agreements with other floating farms. You work for a bit on that floating farm, and then you can be dropped off on another holiday, like you were just describing, back and forth.
I thought you were going to say, like, if a student, you have like 6 months of working in that country, and then 6 months of not working in the country because there are no crops growing, because it's the other, like, let's say, side of the year. But if you go to a floating farm, you get to work for 6 months and another 6 months because
when you want to save up some money.
But on the other hand, I guess, like, if you're floating, let's say, from the warm climate to the other half of the globe, there's probably a couple of weeks. You don't get there in a day, right? So you have a couple of weeks of relaxation, enjoying whatever.
All the tasty food.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you eat super healthy on those floating farms, but
a little monotonous, though. Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever the speciality is of that floating farm, you'll be eating many things based on that.
Exactly. You have, if you stick with the Brussels sprouts, you have Brussels sprouts, pancakes, Brussels sprout soup, Brussels sprout, and everything. Okay, that can get healthy but monotonous.
So monotonous when they're traveling around, but then regularly the floating farms will group together.
True.
For harvest festivals. And then that's really a good time to celebrate, because then you can have foods made from all different things.
Oh, that actually sounds great. A harvest festival somewhere in the middle of the ocean. All the farms kind of click together, and you can basically hop from farm to farm. That actually sounds great. I've never been there. Have you?
Not recently, no. A long time ago I did, but not for a while now.
That sounds like fun. I'm putting that on my bucket list.
Sure.
A very long bucket list. So any particular type of farms that you know that are...
Yeah, so we've mostly been talking about fruits and vegetables. I mean, that's the vast majority of what's farmed. There are a few more, I guess, unusual ones. One of which is for making pack ice cream. So sure, there's ready access to cool weather, or to cold weather and ice. And as we mentioned earlier, lots of salt. So it's really perfect for making things like salted caramel ice cream.
And I guess this also uses then the kind of like the ocean water freezing over.
Exactly.
Okay. And when it's getting warmer on one side on the globe, on the polar ice, pack ice area, you just float to the other side, produce some more ice.
Yeah.
I heard of the steak farms.
Yeah, that's partly because it's not legal to. So then, to be clear, they're not animals on there. It's grown meat, but still that's not allowed in most countries. So a way around that is to have the farm out at sea, where international laws don't apply.
And they're afraid that if you eat like vegetarian steak, that you're more inclined to start considering illegal meat eating moments. Yeah, that's true. But it's exactly because of that, it's a pretty big industry, right? The steak farms.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't prepare anything else. No?
No.
But luckily, we got a listener email.
We got an impressive email. We haven't heard from Felix in a while. He was sending us emails for a few weeks, some months ago, I think. And he saved them all up,
Yes, exactly. So it looks like he's been binge listening, and now he sent us. We can at least read his whole email.
Sure. I'll read it here. So, so this was from Felix. Actually, he was replying to episode number 90. So, Felix wrote, I always wanted to know from the start of the podcast what nations and countries are there, and also what the names of the people are that lead those countries. And then P.S., can you make an episode where you ask people on the street what they think life back in 2022 looked like? P.P.S., can you tell me what computer parts you all use, and if there are different types of computers? P.P.P.S., do you all have a cure for cancer? P.P.P.P.S., how big is the world population? P.P.P.P.P.S., have you been to Alpha Centauri yet? Please answer to this email. I want to know.
No.
There were a whole lot of O's and W's in that.
Right.
That's a whole lot of questions, Felix. Thanks very much.
Yes, we could have an episode just completely answering his questions. But I thought we'll just answer a few and we'll save some of the answers.
Maybe we can come back to some of the others.
I could take the one about the world population because I looked it up.
Sure.
Because honestly, a lot of the answers that we have is because we looked them up.
Right.
I wouldn't have known out of the top of my head, but it's 8 billion. There's 8 billion here.
Yep, 8 billion humans, yeah.
On Earth.
Yeah, and then so the total population, if you include robots and such, is 11 billion.
Yeah, and it's even a little more if you also include the sentient animals, which by all accounts we do, but I'm guessing if you're looking at it from the 21st century perspective, if you're just thinking about humans on Earth, it's 8 billion.
Yeah.
And also on Earth, so it's not counting the rest of the solar system.
Sure, no, just on Earth. I mean, the question was the world population?
World population? Yeah. He asked about the world population.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So just Earth, and right, we're not including all the people who live other parts of the solar system or other planets further out.
We also didn't include all the alien races. I don't even know how many Illuminati or Parsians there are.
Right.
It's, I guess, I'm not sure if this is considered big or small. I know it used to be way bigger in the past. I'm not sure how much it used to be.
I think it definitely got up in the 20, maybe 30 billion range. Yeah. That was a while ago now.
But it's 8 billion despite us getting really old because people sometimes leave Earth. We don't reproduce a whole lot. And
sure, people have far fewer children than they used to.
Yeah, and it's slowly declining. So 8 billion, kind of relaxed, a lot of space.
Yeah. Especially, we mentioned, more and more places that used to be farmland, places that used to be car parks, for example, roads. They've all been rewilded, so there's way more space around for people.
80 billion, nice and quiet.
Wait, 8 billion or 80 billion, you said?
8.
8 billion, yeah. I thought I misheard.
But then I thought the other question he asked, what are the nations?
Right. There's 217 nations at the moment. Yeah. And sure, I looked it up back in, so Felix was writing to us in 2022. We've just gone from 22 to 22, 23, but I'm assuming it didn't change so much in a month or so. So anyway, it was 195.
So I guess some were added, but I really don't know which ones.
Sure, no.
And I mean, we can't really list all 217 here.
No, there's too many, but I'll just give a few. So that you've got Germany, Canada, Egypt, Brazil, Japan, Alaska, Greece, France, Tibet, and Monaco.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So
those are some countries that don't exist.
Exactly. It's kind of like we thought. Okay, if we want to read out all the countries, we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah. Or speaking really fast.
Exactly. So we read a bunch. I hope it was interesting. If you want to know more countries, we can split them over many.
You can ask all the countries beginning with the letter C. For
exactly. Tell me which countries exist that start with letter C in the 23rd century. And then I thought what I thought was nice was you asked about the leaders. Like, what are the names of the people that lead these countries? Yeah. So I guess it would be a similar long list.
Right, we're not going to list every single.
Actually, what I try to do is remember the ones that I know. Yeah. So before then looking it up, but it's Fatima al-Rashidi, because she's Chancellor of Germany. We live in Germany, so she's basically in the news a bit more here. She's also, I think, relatively famous globally. And of course, Beatriz, President of Brazil, that I know.
Yeah, she just has what's it called when you have just one name? You don't have a first name and a last name.
Yeah.
So she goes by that.
I think officially she must have, like, I think Beatriz de blah 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 de Carvalho de blah blah, I don't know, something, but she never uses it.
Right.
Also on the clothing she wears, it always has a big. She has a.
I think mononym is the word for it.
Could be.
But
at least whenever she has any public appearance, she always wears clothing that shows her name really big.
Yeah.
And the third one that I remember out of the top of my head, and then had to start looking things up, was Janet Garrison. She's president of the United States of America. Kind of a famous person.
Yeah. I can say a couple.
Yeah.
So, president of China, that's Gertrude Bierzelt.
Yeah.
Emily and Marie Claire Jumel are the presidents of France. They're twin sisters, right?
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister of Canada is one of the very few world leaders who's male. That's Justin Bieber.
Yeah, Justin Bieber. Yeah. And then I remember one more after we were finished with the list. Princess Janice Bates of Zealand.
Right.
Because it's a really small country.
Super small.
Normally, I don't really know much of the leaders of the really tiny countries, but
right. But I think that's the last country to have a monarchy.
Is it?
I think so.
Actually.
Yeah. I'm not aware of any others.
No, now that you mention it, no. I hadn't even identified it as a monarchy, but it's true, Princess
it
sounds different than chancellor or president.
Exactly.
But she's in the news a whole lot.
Yeah.
So for somebody leading a country that's essentially, I think the population of the country is like 50 people or so. But she's always in the media.
Yeah.
No.
Very popular.
Yeah. So those were 3 questions that we thought we could answer in this episode. We will do a lot of the PPPPSs in our upcoming episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the future.
In the future, exactly. We will answer your questions in the future, literally. Okay. I
think that's it for today.
Yeah.
We mentioned that Felix wrote to us. He wrote to us at michaellasagna5@gmail.com. And he put in the subject line the number 90 because that was the episode he was replying to. So when you're listening to this, please write to us at michaellasagna5@gmail.com with the number 94 in the subject line and any questions you have for us in the body. And we may reply to you in the show in the future.
Okay. Then thanks for listening and see you in 2 minutes.
Bye-bye.